Good evening, YouTube. Tonight, I would like to talk to you a little bit about the concept that I've discovered, but not exactly discovered, that I would like to point out. Uh, the topic of anti-Trump advertising. Now, another word for it would be something like a smear campaign. If you remember, in my previous videos, I talked about the Kinsella scandal surrounding Maxime Bernier, an individual whom I deeply respect and admire. The trouble with Kinsella was that the conservatives allegedly, though because Andrew Scheer so blatantly lied about his involvement, I can definitely confirm that they were involved, hired Kinsella to smear campaign Maxime Bernier's PPC party and his reputation as and smear him as a racist and white supremacist. There was a dominant, let's call it, atmosphere in the media for that kind of demeanor surrounding his party, surrounding himself, which was a fake glamour, if you will, afforded to him by Andrew Scheer and the conservatives. So now we talk about destroying someone's reputation and the tactics behind it. I'm going to use this article, Rudy Giuliani involved in a legal controversy in Romania, to break down this clip for you, or pardon me, this topic for you, sort of so I can show you a little bit of the tactics employed by the Americans, American media, the American media, in order to destroy Trump's reputation, to destroy Trump's allies, and ultimately to get Trump out of office by hook or by crook. So let's begin. I will play this article with your kind indulgence.
Has been all over the Ukraine controversy. He's said to have been involved in a shadow campaign to promote President Trump's theories and interests at nearly every step along the way. Now there's new information that the president's personal lawyer may be caught up elsewhere in a different Eastern European nation, Romania. Our CNN senior investigative correspondent, Drew Griffin.
Okay, the first thing I wanted to mention is this guy is known in the past for being a complete anti-Trump, how would you call it, propagation of anti-Trump material. He's been at the forefront of the press attacking Trump and so on. And essentially, when you look at an article like this, analyze who is the people writing. So CNN, we can assume, is completely biased in favor of Democrats and anti-Trump in its goal. So this guy, I find him very amusing because he seems to be at the center of a lot of scandals, or, he's an expert at leading his so-called people he interviews, witnesses and whatnot, to make the scandal seem to be more and more bigger. There is no scandal, but essentially this guy is a tool to make a scandal. So, thank you.
Yeah, our CNN senior vet.
It took just one errant statement from Donald Trump to put critical focus on the real business of Rudy Giuliani.
So there is the first point. It takes one misreading of a statement to create the controversy and material. I apologize for interrupting, but I need to interject for a moment. So right away we know the target is Rudy Giuliani. The aim is to connect Giuliani with a scandal in Romania, to which he probably has no knowledge of, but nevertheless, that's irrelevant. Pardon me for interrupting.
Selling his connections to Donald Trump.
Well, I think what Biden did and his son, and now I guess they're finding also Romania, that just came out today, or some other country, and I'm sure there are more than that.
What happened in Romania is now in the spotlight, but not for what Joe Biden's son Hunter did. President Trump's attempt to deflect from his troubles has connected the dots between Hunter Biden and Trump's own personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani.
So there it comes to a climax. They're saying that because Trump said this connection, he obviously made a connection between Rudy Giuliani and Romania. You see, it's very, very, it's a lie, an outright lie, I would say. But they use the narrative to create a connection there. Now watch as they put it together. They're going to call a few witnesses, so-called it's more like interpretations, of course, by a so-called master in a field or something like that. In this case, it was a law professor or something along those lines. So an authority to reinforce their claim. Here, watch.
Law professor and ethics expert Kathleen Clark says Rudy Giuliani could be in real trouble.
What Giuliani did is so much worse than what Hunter Biden did.
So this lady here, Kathleen Clark, pardon me, for all we know, she was either bought off by the Democrats themselves, the press, whatever. The press themselves are bought off. But in order to get her to speak and say a few things, she could be a sympathizer of the Democratic Party. She could be bought off by the Democratic Party. And she could be she could be partisan and biased in her approach. The fact that these interviews in the past, I could say when I was a young man, were more to try to discover a truth in the press. This truth that's trying to be discovered is not a truth. It's leading the audience to a conclusion. So in that way, it's advertising. Pardon me for interrupting.
Than what Hunter Biden did.
It all centers around this man, Gabriel Popoviciu. He's a Romanian businessman convicted in a land fraud scheme north of Bucharest. His case, part of a lengthy struggle by the former Eastern Bloc country to crack down on corruption, including corrupt politicians, something the U.S., through official channels, has been pushing for years, according to former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Heather Connolly.
For Romania, its fight against corruption is its fight in some ways for its survival as a democratic state.
To help him fight corruption charges in Romania, Popoviciu turned to power brokers in the United States.
Pardon me for interrupting again. So there's a couple of things to point out there. Number one, Trump has been very sincere in his effort to end corruption abroad, especially in his own country, but to help at least people who are of the same goodwill, like the president of Ukraine. They've tried to negotiate a way that the states can help them to end corruption in that state. If you study a little bit about Ukraine, you'll know that the previous administration, who was close to Barack Obama, by the way, endorsed a lot of corruption in their state, criminals going free and whatnot, and not being punished for anything, as long as they paid the right officials. So government corruption was thriving under the previous administration in Ukraine. Now the new Ukrainian president wants to work with Trump to try to end those corruption, which essentially is what they were talking about and why Trump has this impeachment scandal in the first place. The conversation was about ending corruption in Ukraine, and by extension, pointing his attention, although the Ukrainian president already knew, to Joe Biden's corruption going on in Ukraine. So what we can conclude is that this person here, Popoviciu, is the pretense for the media to attack Giuliani. And I don't want to interrupt too much, so I'll just let it continue playing.
Popoviciu turned to power brokers in the United States. He first retained Hunter Biden when Biden's father was the vice president. It didn't help. Popoviciu was convicted in March 2016. Biden referred the case to another well-connected attorney, former FBI Director Louis Freeh, to help with his appeal, a source told CNN. The appeal failed. Freeh hired Rudy Giuliani, and Giuliani wrote this letter to the president of Romania just months after becoming the private attorney for Donald Trump in 2018. Giuliani has said in interviews Freeh's firm paid him to write it, though it did not mention Popoviciu by name.
There you go. So they did not mention Popoviciu by name. It could be something that he wrote to the president, not even concerning this matter. Because I believe this matter is fake in its conception, fake as far as the execution goes with witnesses and whatnot. The way that they play them together is like a deck of cards. You know what I mean? It's a gigantic bluff, if you will, of facts. Pardon me, of fake half-truths, you could say. The documentation, of course, they left it very vague and blurred, so the audience cannot really see or scrutinize what's being written. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a complete slander of the events that happened.
It sounds just like the propaganda that we've been fed by the former government. Weakening the rule of law, decriminalizing abuse of power, amnesty for corrupt people.
What the letter did do was attack Romania's anti-corruption unit. It said there was damage to the rule of law, and that directly and negatively affects the flow of foreign investment.
So, okay. Now, this anti-corruption committee, let's call it, where Giuliani attacks, in a country like Romania, that could be so many groups. So what the press doesn't tell you is that it may say anti-corruption, but Giuliani might have found evidence that it actually was corrupt itself and investigating anti-corruption. You see, the hypocrisy is great. It's fantastic. It's like the time in Alberta when there was a board elected to oversee energy in this province. I did a video on it not so long ago, but feels like a long time ago. Essentially, the head responsible for making the province of Alberta accountable and responsible with energy used the money that the province paid him to oversee to start a company called Icor, I think, something like that, and using it to line his own pockets with the money that he was supposed to use to help the province to have more responsible energy, or in turn more accountability when it comes to climate change. But he used the money rather to line his own pockets. So that is an example. Giuliani might have been trying to point out the hypocrisy of this group. And then the press, of course, comes forward directly and negatively affects the foreign investment in Romania. So they make it a gigantic economic issue that Giuliani intervened here. So you see, the whole thing is designed to negate the fine details of the thing, that Giuliani's involvement itself, that they're trying to connect, is a complete fabrication. It's probably unrelated to this actual circumstance. So thank you.
In Romania, Giuliani demanded amnesty to those who have been prosecuted and convicted by the unit. Less than 2 months earlier, the U.S. State Department and 11 other nations issued a statement that was the complete opposite of Giuliani's letter, urging Romania to continue this crackdown on corruption.
So we don't know what it says in Giuliani's letter, and yet they're trying to say that it is contrary to the anti-corruption rule of law by the the U.S. Embassy in Romania. So I laugh at the absolute hypocrisy created in this clip that CNN is trying. Again, I reiterate, it is anti-Trump advertising for CNN. It's nothing more than an advertising commercial to try to create more anti-Trump sentiment in Americans or anybody that views it. So I apologize for interrupting so many times during the clip, but I hope that you found it amusing as I have. Really, if you look at the press, it's if you anticipate that they're lying in advance, it helps a lot. There's no limit to the scandal or how crazy the scandal can be in terms of like CNN and MSNBC fabricating things. It's so amusing to me. But fake news is the correct term for these organizations. And I wonder, the better question is how CNN and MSN can be accountable for biased sentiment in their programming and biased advertising in their actual news articles. So it's attempting to persuade its audience to believe Rudy Giuliani had any connection here. And if they succeed in a percentage of the population believing it, then I suppose it fulfilled its purpose. Thank you so much again for your time and attention. Bye-bye.